Welcome to the Brady Bunch. This is an introduction podcast of an overview of mental health and criminal justice.
All right, look at this. Cool.
What's up, boys?
What's up, man?
All right. Of course, we're doing this for Dr. Brady's class. What is it? The special topics.
And
it's like a long-winded name.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the easiest way to do this is go around, like we were saying, do it names and let's just do name your major, and then we'll go to feature points and stuff like that here in a minute. You want to start?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. My name is Gavin Finley. I'm a criminology major. After graduation, I'm hoping to be a homicide detective, and the main reason I chose this class is to get a better understanding of what I'm going into in my future career.
Alright, my name is Kyle Neely. I'm a senior majoring in criminal justice and criminology. Future plans after graduation are being a police officer down in Florida, and chose this because being a cop, criminal justice, that's all involved in that.
Yeah, I'm Hunter Davis. I'm also a senior. I'm also a criminal justice major myself. Future plans. I want to go work for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, GBI. I want to go do the sort of the similar thing you're doing. I want to go be a detective investigator, sort of that range. Whatever I can get into the GBI and investigate is what I want to do. Chose this class, I guess, for the same reasons y'all did. I mean, it's an interesting topic of mental health. It's something that it's a big deal nowadays in society. We need to be looking into, especially as law enforcement officers.
Yeah.
Something we need to keep an eye out on, and to better make our decisions, help us do our things. So, yeah. Where are you from? I've never asked that question.
I'm from Thompson, Georgia.
Okay.
So
What about you?
I'm from Johns Creek, Georgia.
Gotcha. I'm from Loganville, so Loganville, Georgia.
Yeah.
So yeah. We've kind of gone over why we choose this class and sort of going on our thoughts and opinions about mental health. That's what this class is based off of. We're looking at it, but we're looking at mental health through the criminal justice standpoint. So I guess just an overview of mental health. What are y'all's thoughts? Either before the class, during the class, whatever.
Before I started this class, I really didn't know too much about what I was getting into, like the stigmas about mental health in the criminal justice field. I mean, I always knew there was some opinions, negative opinions on law enforcement officers and everything like that, and how it may have affected them.
Mm-hmm.
But throughout this course, I've gained a better perspective on maybe the mental health of corrections officers, law enforcement, patrol officers, various things, and it's very interesting to actually understand like how these things come about and kind of like how it affects them, how they can get treated and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I really found it pretty interesting, honestly.
Yeah, I'd have to say the same thing. I really didn't know much about mental health and criminal justice coming into the class, and definitely learned a lot about the stigma of police officers, anyone in law enforcement getting burnout, and how it can be such a stressful job that after just a couple of years they get tired of it. They can't mentally keep up and keep going, being a law enforcement officer. And this has been a very interesting class, especially going into what I plan on my profession being, and I feel like I've learned a lot.
Yeah,
by taking it.
same way. I think just like, I'm sure y'all did too. Like I focused more on. I found a really big interest when I realized we were talking about law enforcement officers with mental health, because that's something I've always been worried about. As a homicide detective and as a GBI agent, we're gonna and even as any law enforcement officer, you're seeing it worse and worse in society. How do you keep a stable mind in what you're doing? And I think this class has given me an opportunity to understand that, to educate myself about what I need to be doing if I come across those scenarios, and also what what I need to be doing if I see my coworkers or my friends in those situations. How do I approach that? Suicide was a big that we talked about. So how do you approach suicide threats from your fellow officers? It's like you need to know how to do that. I think like y'all, I didn't know a lot about mental health, and this class has given me that opportunity to like expand my knowledge enough to like have some kind of knowledge going into the future of how I need to do it. I think it's also very beneficial to have this class, also from the juveniles perspective. As we talked about this week, that's what we hit on this week, talking about just criminals in general, prisons, things like that, like inmate and like criminal mindsets, as well as like how can mental health play an effect in that, because it's a big deal, because maybe you're dealing with somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. How do you approach that scenario? Do you do it the same way, or are you more precautionary, things like that? So
Yeah, I like how the class covers not just, like you were saying, law enforcement officers, but anyone in the community. How we were talking about veterans this week, and juveniles, and like just everyone, not just strictly criminal justice. Like, definitely learned about everyone in the community that struggles with mental health issues and how we can help them. And
also homelessness. Did we talk about that like this week, last week?
Yeah.
That was a big deal. It's like, I wouldn't have thought in a criminal justice class we'd be talking about, how mental health can associate to the, homeless population, how like drugs and substance abuse can fall into it. And so it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's definitely expanded me a lot in my mindset. So I think the next best question to ask is, how is mental health affected, as we've seen in the class, like criminal justice. And I think the first thing is, we've seen a lot more programs in recent years. Now they've been happening for years and years and years, but I think we're seeing more of a push to have those programs and those steps and those reforms to approach those situations.
definitely making it easier for individuals that need it to get in there, and easier to find them and just get into the programs.
We say that, but it was crazy thing. It's still hard. It's still very hard. But I think now that we're addressing them, it has that possibility.
It's more accessible
Mhm.
for sure.
What about you? Anything?
I mean, I really agree with what both of y'all said. I have the same kind of opinion, honestly. Don't want to like piggyback and repeat what y'all both said. Y'all made some pretty valid points.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just also like having this opportunity, like to do a podcast and this assignment like this, where we have the opportunity not only just to discuss among each other and like pick each other's brains, but then we're having the opportunity, as we'll talk about here later, to go and talk with, because we're focusing on the law enforcement side of things. That's because that's where we're all going. I think that we all sort of agreed that like, this is where our profession is going to be, and that's what we're worried about. That's what we want to learn and what we want to find out. So I think it gives us a very valuable opportunity not only to find that, but other like the inmates, the corrections, and things like that from the people we'll be interviewing. Which again, we'll talk about that here later. So I don't know what.
Should we talk about who we're having on the podcast, or
that's a good idea.
All right, well, I'll start with my guy. His name's Jamal. Met him through my roommate. He's from Statesboro. He is a Bullitt County Sheriff officer when he's not. Well, he's technically an SRO, but when he's not on duty, he's a Bullitt County Sheriff officer. He started out in the corrections facility down here in Statesboro. And I'm excited to have him on because he can give us two sides, from being a corrections officer to an SRO to working with juveniles, and even just being out in the community on patrol, and tell his perspective about that.
Yeah. I can do Broadhead.
Okay.
So the other guy we got coming on, we got really lucky. to have this connection. I think because it gives us a really unique perspective. We have Charles Broadhead coming on, who is the chief of Statesboro Police here in town, and I met him. I had his criminal procedure class with you were in that class
I
last
was in that
semester.
class too.
Last
Yeah.
semester, 2 semesters, last semester.
Last semester. Yep.
So got that opportunity to take that class with him and get to know him a little bit better, get to know where where he's at in his mind, and pick his brain and things like that in the class. But yeah, that's really what I know from it. Just got lucky to make a great relationship with him, to be able to ask him to come on, and he was more than willing to come on. I think he's another great perspective because you're getting this high up guy who puts in these programs, puts in the reforms. He sees what's happening with his officers on the day-to-day basis, and he's able to make the decisions on how to do these, change these things, do these things. So I think having him on is going to give us a really good perspective on not only it specifically as officers himself, but also the community perspective. Like, I know one thing that maybe some people have seen, and I'm sure y'all have seen in the Statesboro, is that Statesboro PD focus a lot on community policing. They do a lot of community events. They're out all the time. They're very proactive. They try and greet you. They're very nice. They're definitely what I would call a community policing program. So how they're able to take that sort of idea and apply that with their mental health and how they approach situations and things like that. So yeah, that's.
And I think the nice thing about Broadhead is he can tell us how he's handled mental health from being in law enforcement for so long, working his way from a patrol officer out in Colorado and work his way up and end up here in Statesboro. And
I think that's another thing is that he not only just a Georgia perspective, but like he was a military officer too. I forgot.
Yeah.
So like he can give ideas on that, on the military. Seeing a lot of we talked about veterans, so guys with PTSD maybe, or just in Colorado in general, they had different laws than we do. They decriminalized marijuana and like a bunch of other drugs. So if that was going on at the time he was there, like how did that play a role in some things?
So he'll definitely give an interesting perspective on his officers himself and how he's handled staying in for so long, and I'm interested to hear and talk to him about that.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And for our third interview, we chose Spencer Reiner, and right now he works for emergency services for Georgia Southern, but in the past he's worked with investigations, he worked with the DEA. And the reason we chose him, he has a lot of valuable experience and he loves to tell stories. His stories are actually very interesting. So that was one of the main reasons, like, I'd love to pick his brain and actually really understand, like, his perspective on mental health and how he feels about it and how he thinks we could actually also better it in the future also among law enforcement officers.
Yeah, and I got the opportunity to have him come out to talk with my fraternity chapter, and talk about sort of how he keeps his mind, especially his faith. That was the biggest thing, but like how he keeps himself centered in himself because he's seen murders, he's seen crime scenes, he's seen what was it like the
He's seen a lot.
bodies like decomposed, like everything. He's seen, you name it, he's seen it, like, and I'm sure he will go talk about some of those stories. I hope he does. But it's a really, really unique opportunity because not only with DEA working investigations with what was it, with district attorney, the DA, he was a DA investigator. He also worked with Bullitt County Sheriff for years first. So like. He, like you said, loves to tell stories. He's got a lot of experience under his belt. He's been doing it a long time. I'm super excited for that one because having that class with him in investigations and he's so wise. Like he's crazy wise. All three of them I'm super excited about. I don't know, like Broadhead is just a great guy. You know,
Yes.
he's also really wise. You know, I've never met Jamal, but I'm super excited to meet
Yeah.
him. You know,
I've
for
met
that.
him a few times, so it'll be interesting hearing what he has to say. I've
Mhm.
talked to him just a couple times about like what he does and everything, but he didn't really get too in depth with it. But I haven't really ever talked to an SRO officer or SRO, and so I think it'll be interesting to hear his side of
Yeah.
it.
And you
Deal with
said he was
juveniles.
middle school SRO, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's in middle school, at middle school SRO. So,
And I'm sure. I mean, did y'all have SROs when y'all were in high school? Because I had two of them.
We had to also.
One of them, Brady, he was on Cops actually. He was on an episode of Cops when he used to be a patrol officer. So, I mean, just seeing our SROs at school and then hearing from an act like hearing from their side of the story, I think is
yeah,
it's gonna be cool.
I know I had one SRO in high school and one in middle school. So, I know where I'm from, they didn't really have much going on, but
Yeah. I'm sure we had, I think we had one, actually we had one SRO between one of the elementary schools that I went to and our middle school. There was only one, but she really only seemed to do like, I think she was more stationed at the middle school. But she like did traffic, like big on traffic. So that's what I thought it was. Then I got to high school and was seeing like, you know, they actually deal with a little bit more than just
Yeah.
breaking up fights or
Yeah.
traffic. They're there to like, they're there for support. They're there to, you know, help people. They're,
Yeah.
you know, they're like, they had an open door policy. So it was like, if y'all need to talk, we're a resource you have to come speak to us. No judgment, no nothing, like come talk to us. We want to help you.
yeah, I feel like they're there to get you on the right track at a young age and show you not to mess up, get into drugs and get into fights and
Yeah.
just doing all that, and like you stay away from that, you can get yourself on a great path and have a successful life. I feel like SROs are important to have in schools, and without them they could cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, and I'm sure when we talk with Jamal, we'll discuss a lot about that again.
Yeah, learn a lot about that.
So yeah, real quick to sort of break down, I think how the interviews are going to go. Just a real quick, you know, breakdown. Basically, come in, we'll do the interview with them. Then once that's over, we'll have them. You know, they're more than free to leave if they want to stay. But after, we're going to do a little discussion between the three of us, just discussing how, you know, each one went, how it went. You know, because we'll talk about some expectations and things like that. Where it's, you know, like we're super excited. So, you know, how did the interview go? We'll talk about, you know, things we thought were interesting. We'll take notes throughout each one. And then at the end, so we'll have those three, and then in our finale, we're going to get together just like this and pretty much compare and contrast all three of them. See what things did we hear that was similar, what things will differ. Because we'll have questions we'll ask all three of them that are similar in nature, but then we'll have specific questions. So yeah, I'm super.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped about it,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah. It's good. It's gonna be a good time. It's gonna be very interesting. So yeah, let's move on from that. Let's talk about, you know, what really taking what we're doing and applying it to, you know, what we've talked about in the course. You know, I know we've talked about, you know, our overview, our expectations, and we used a lot of things from class in that. Especially burnout. That was a
Yeah.
big thing we all three of us talked about, you know, before. That was like, this is what we want to hit on. Because in class, of course, we talked about that burnout was a big like problem with officers and job performance, and you know how they interact with their fellow officers, to stops, to things like that, but also to like their own stress, their own mental health. You know, like suicide. Suicide numbers, you know, burnout is like that key factor, that key I don't know, piece in the middle of everything. So really, I think for all three of us, understanding burnout from these three guys is what we really want to figure out. We want to understand burnout better. We want to focus in on that. What else, you know?
Kind of want to touch on their like opinions on like treatment plans for either the community, people suffering with mental health and law enforcement, kind of like how they think either things could change to be better or what programs they could implement to kind of, I wouldn't say reverse, but kind of lead us into a better direction of understanding mental health in the community or law enforcement, and kind of just go from there and get their perspective on it.
Yeah. Because we also like, I don't know, what was I? Like, not only like programs they want to implement, but like, do they have any programs that they've seen that have worked or not worked? Kind of a broad head, we want to ask, how do you, have y'all put in any, mental health programs or like not even programs, but just steps? Have you implemented any steps or things that officers can do to, talk to people? That not this, masculine idea that we've talked about, where it's like, I don't need to say anything, or if I say anything, I'm not a man, or I'm hurting myself. But saying something is okay, and seeing if they have y'all done anything, has it worked or not?
I really want to talk to them about how they see individuals with a mental health problem and how they react to it, or how quickly they're able to tell in that situation, especially with an officer going and talk to someone. Sometimes they don't know what they have going on, because no officer really, usually when they're going to talk to someone, it's on their worst day, and they have to assess quickly, are they suffering from a mental health issue? How should we approach this individual? How should we fix them? What do we need to do to make them be better? Do we need to take them to a facility for mental health? Do they need to go to the hospital? Like, I think that'll be interesting, talking to them, figuring out like what the best option is coming across someone that's suffering from a mental health crisis.
Yeah, I completely agree. Real quick, just sort of a PSA for the podcast. If you ever see me with the headphones on or messing with the camera, I'm sort of dealing with our technical stuff, so making sure our sound's good, our video's good, making sure nothing cuts off on us midway through. So actually, I'm going to do that now, so y'all just keep. What else do we got?
Kind of want to go over like the broad questions we have for everybody, just kind of as like a rundown. So we kind of want them to like introduce themselves. Like, we want to ask like what's their career, like what they've done in the past, and maybe their future goals if they want to move up or something. How long they've been working in law enforcement. We touched on burnout, but we may ask, have they ever felt burnout, or have they ever seen anybody in their department that's been burnt out? How do they handle?
Maybe even can you notice, like, when is there a point where you're like, they're having burnout, like something's off? Like, is there a point where they're like, they know, or is like, it's sort of just all of a sudden like, okay, it's here, or is it like gradual or whatnot? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just had thought of that. I was like, that'd be pretty cool.
And in today's world, how do they like handle the negative stigma or hatred towards law enforcement officers? Or if they even have any coping mechanisms that they could put themselves in a good headspace, or kind of like better themselves in a way. I feel like those are some good broad questions that we could ask them, and they'd be pretty open about answering.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of people, with when I was deciding to come and do something like this, my dad was very like interested, because he was like, well, you're doing this, for the community service, great, but you're not making a lot of money. Why are you doing it? Like, you should be looking for something that wants more money, provides more money. And basically my thing is I'd rather do something that makes me happy than do something that makes me more money. I want to help people. That's why I want to do this. But, they could get to a point, especially with the burnout, like the negative stigma that, the society's giving law enforcement. It's giving, like, maybe these guys don't have their job satisfaction. Maybe they don't think they're doing enough. So it's, it's causing them to be like, well, why did I do this? I don't want to be doing this anymore. I'm not doing the job. I'm not doing good enough for society, so why should I keep doing it? And that's definitely been a worry for me, because it's like, I don't want to lose this passion that I have for doing this, because I want to be a good, I want to be good, not only to the job, to our fellow officers, to the people I interact with, because I want to make the best and most just decision for them.
Yeah.
But I mean, it also applies to my personal life.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't want to go home and take all these problems and this burnout and these issues and put them in on my family, my wife and my kids, when I hopefully have them one day. Put them back on my parents, on my grandparents, on my family at all. Like, that's not right for them. I chose this, they didn't, but I want them to push me
Mhm.
hard, but I don't want to, and that's something that, that's why I really wanted to focus, like, burnout, and like, I want to ask these questions to these guys, just like, I want to be the best I can be.
Exactly,
I
yeah.
want to be happy.
I think asking them about their, I think we've already gone over this, but their opinion on mental health in the community
Mhm.
and like the criminal justice system and what they think needs to be done better, and I feel like they'll have definitely an interesting perspective on that because they're in it, they see it every day, and I think that'll be an interesting topic to bring up.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's something else we could, talk about, like I was saying, like with, my family, maybe, has the job ever affected, maybe not necessarily like that, but like, how is the job, has the job, like, spilled over into your personal life? Were there times where, because I know especially with Reiner, with that, like, there, every cop's got their one call.
Yeah.
And with Reiner, with that one call, he's talked about it in class, he's talked about it with me, and I'm sure he'll talk about that story and talk about that. Where, it kept him up at night. Has there been times where that spilled over? Because if that happens in your personal life, you don't want to take the job home.
Yeah.
And, you don't want to be doing the job 24/7. You want to have a little time to yourself.
Yeah.
But if the job is pushing you over, you feel like you're at work all the time.
Yeah.
And it's got to be so draining.
Yeah.
Drain you mentally, physically. It'll definitely put a dent on your life and cause some problems bringing it home, especially to your wife, your kids. So.
We talked about, we're really focused on the law enforcement aspect of it, where, bringing, really focused on law enforcement's mental health, like officer mental health, things like that in our interviews. But I think with the unique lineup we've got of these three guys, we have the opportunity to look at what we looked at last week. Like we were saying, veterans, the community, especially the community, like we've been talking about, like how does, mental health, and criminal justice and things like that, how does that affect the community? I think these guys can give them, like we were saying, a good topic on that. It's juveniles, especially with Jamal.
Yeah.
I know Dr. Brady's big, and like that's her area. That's where I first, got our juvenile justice.
Yeah.
Was that for you too?
Yeah.
Juvenile justice, and like her focus is there, but also in mental health as well. Because I think she said she has one of her degrees is in psychology.
Yeah.
And then one in like her focus is, for her master's, I think, or something, was for criminal justice. But I think focusing, because that's what we talked about this week in class. What was it, Monday? Yeah, yesterday. We talked a lot about, and I think this whole unit's on juveniles, mental health among juveniles, and juvenile offenders and things like that. And just like, there's a lot to it that we've had to break down, but I think this gives an opportunity to expand on a lot of things we've been learning. What other things in class, like topics, do y'all think are involved? Substance abuse, I think we talked about that.
Yeah.
With
Co-occurring.
yeah. Jails and inmates, because Jamal also does that.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be a fun one and a long one, because you've got two perspectives we really want to look at.
Yeah. He's got a lot a lot of experience in two different areas, and especially with him being a younger officer compared to Reiner and Broadhead, they've been in it longer, but Jamal will definitely give an interesting perspective on being younger and